Every time you explain yourself to someone who already decided you were wrong, something inside you dies a little. Not dramatically, not all at once, just quietly. A small piece of your self-respect stepping back into the shadows, making room for someone who never deserved that much space to begin with. And you know this. Some part of you has always known this. But knowing it and stopping it, those are two completely different countries, and nobody ever gave you a map between them. So you keep explaining. You keep reaching for the right words, the perfect sentence, the exact arrangement of truth that will finally make them understand what they did to you, what they cost you. You rehearse it in the shower, you draft it in your head at 3 a.m. when sleep won't come and the ceiling feels like it's pressing down. You think, if I can just say it clearly enough, if I can just find the right way in, they'll get it. They'll feel it. They'll finally see me. But here is what I need you to stay with me for, because what I'm about to tell you is something nobody in your life has ever said plainly enough. And by the time this is over, you will understand why you keep going back, why you keep explaining, and why the moment you stop, permanently, quietly, without announcement, is the exact moment your real life begins. You were not born this way. You were not born needing to justify your pain to the people who caused it. That is not a personality trait. That is a wound dressed up as a personality trait. And the difference matters more than you know. Somewhere along the way, and you already know when, even if you've never said it out loud, you learned that your feelings were not enough on their own. That love was conditional on your ability to explain yourself clearly, calmly, without inconveniencing anyone. That your hurt only counted if you could prove it in a court where the judge was also the person on trial. Think about that. You were taught to seek validation for your pain from the exact person who created it. And you were so young when you learned this, so soft and open and desperate to be loved correctly, that it didn't feel like a wound. It felt like just the way things were. It felt like your job. So you got very good at it. You became fluent in justification. You learned how to shrink your anger into something polite, how to present your devastation with enough caveats that nobody could accuse you of being too much. You learned to pre-apologize for having needs, to soften the edges of your truth until it was barely recognizable as truth at all. Just a careful, diplomatic version of pain that other people could sit comfortably with while you bled quietly through the seams. And the exhausting part, the part that hollows you out when you're honest with yourself, is that it never worked. Not once, not really. They still dismissed it. They still twisted it. They still found a way to make your wound about their discomfort, your cry about their inconvenience, your boundaries about their persecution. And you walked away from those conversations feeling worse than before you started. Not because you said the wrong thing, but because there was never a right thing. Because some people do not want to understand. They want to win. But here's what nobody ever tells you about why this keeps happening. And this is the part I need you to really hear. The reason you keep explaining yourself to people who will never truly hear you is not because you haven't found the right words yet. It is because explaining yourself to them is the only way you know how to love them. Let that land for a second. For an empath, for someone who feels the way you feel, who absorbs the world the way you absorb it, connection is built through being understood. When you love someone, you let them all the way in. You show them the real shape of your interior. You believe with every cell in your body that if someone truly saw you, truly, completely, without distortion, they would choose to stay, they would choose to care. And so when they hurt you, the instinct is not to leave. The instinct is to try harder to be seen. Because if they saw you, really saw you, surely they would stop. This is not weakness. This is not stupidity. This is the most human thing about you. But it has been used against you by people who know, consciously or not, that as long as you are still trying to be understood, you are still available, still reachable, still theirs. And here is the truth that will start to set you free, the one that might sting before it heals. Some people are not confused about what they did to you. They know. They know exactly how much space they took up, exactly how much of your light they used for warmth while they gave you nothing back. The explaining you are doing is not illuminating them. It is simply keeping the door open. And they are grateful for that door, because the moment you stop explaining, the moment you go completely, permanently quiet, is the moment they lose access to you entirely. And that terrifies them far more than any conversation ever could. Hold on to that thought, because what comes next completely changes how you see yourself. and why the silence you've been afraid of is actually the most powerful thing you possess. You have smiled through things that would have destroyed most people. You have sat across from someone who was slowly unraveling you, word by word, dismissal by dismissal, and kept your voice steady, kept your face open, chosen kindness when cruelty would have been so much easier, so much faster, so much more honest. You have absorbed their moods like weather, carried their anxiety in your own chest, woken up at 3 a.m. worrying about someone who never once lost a night's sleep over you. You have been accused of being too sensitive by people who needed your sensitivity to survive. You have been told you were overreacting by people who were counting on your reaction to distract from their behavior. You have apologized for things that were done to you. Read that again. You have stood in the rubble of something they caused and said, I'm sorry for how I responded to you hurting me, and you meant it. That is how thoroughly they had rearranged your sense of reality. And the loneliest part, the part you've never quite been able to say out loud, is that while all of this was happening, you were surrounded by people. There were people everywhere, and not one of them saw it. Not one of them pulled you aside and said, I see how much you're carrying. I see what this is doing to you. Not one single person ever just asked if you were okay without needing you to immediately reassure them that you were. So you carried it alone, in public, smiling. And you told yourself that was strength, and it was, but not the kind of strength that heals you. It was the kind that silently, slowly breaks you from the inside out. Stay with me, because the part that will actually set you free is still just ahead. Here is what healing actually looks like, and it is nothing like what anyone told you. Healing does not look like forgiveness speeches. It does not look like peaceful coffee conversations where you both get closure. It does not look like finally saying the perfect thing and watching them crumble with remorse. It does not look like any of the scenes your mind has been rehearsing. Healing looks like silence, real silence, not the angry silence of someone waiting to explode, but the deep, settled silence of someone who has finally stopped waiting for an apology that is never coming, who has finally accepted completely that the person who hurt them is not capable of understanding what they did, not because the language doesn't exist, but because they do not want to understand it. Understanding it would require accountability, and accountability would cost them the image they have built of themselves, and that is a price they will never voluntarily pay. Healing looks like the moment you stop explaining yourself, not in defeat, not in bitterness, but in recognition. Recognition that your truth does not need their validation to be true, that what happened to you was real, whether or not they ever acknowledge it, that the version of you they dismissed, diminished, and drained, that version deserved so much better, still does. And something shifts when you really land on this. Not loudly, you won't feel it arrive with fanfare. It will come quietly, on an ordinary day, in an ordinary moment, and you will simply stop. Stop rehearsing the conversation. Stop drafting the message. Stop running the scenario in your head where they finally get it. You will stop, and in that stopping, something that has been bleeding for years will finally, quietly begin to close. The people who hurt you are not confused about what they did. They are banking on your silence, meaning shame, rather than strength. What they do not know, what they cannot see, is that your silence, when it finally comes, will not be emptiness. It will be arrival. There is a version of you that has already stopped explaining. Picture them for a moment. Not angry, not bitter, not cold in the way that still secretly hopes someone notices the cold. Just done. Genuinely, peacefully, permanently done. They move through the world differently now. Not because they stopped feeling things, an empath never stops feeling, but because they stopped bleeding for people who never bothered to bring bandages. They learned to feel without dissolving, to care without sacrificing, to love from a place that is no longer afraid of being abandoned, because they have finally stopped abandoning themselves. This version of you does not explain, not because they have nothing to say, they have everything to say, but because they have finally understood that the most powerful response to someone who hurt you and refuses to see it is to remove yourself so completely, so finally, so quietly, that your absence becomes the only conversation left. No speech, no final message, no grand exit, just gone. Present somewhere you are actually valued, pouring into people who hold the cup steady instead of knocking it out of your hands, spending the energy you used to waste on justification, and building something with it instead, something real, something yours. The moment this settles in, and it will settle in, because something in you already recognizes it as true. Something changes permanently. The grip loosens, the need dissolves. Not all at once, but enough. Enough to breathe differently. Enough to sleep without the weight of unfinished conversations pressing on your chest. Enough to look at your phone and not feel the pull to reach out and try again. Because you have finally understood the most dangerous thing an empath can become. Not hard, not cold, not closed, just done. And done is not an ending. Done is a door, not the one closing behind you, but the one swinging open in front of you, leading somewhere you have never been allowed to go before. Somewhere nobody is taking from you. Somewhere you are finally, completely yours. There is one more thing, and this is the thing I most want you to carry. You are not still explaining yourself because you are weak. You are still explaining yourself because you are someone who genuinely believes that people are capable of more than they are currently choosing to be. That belief is not your flaw. That belief is your gift. It is the same gift that makes you the person everyone calls in the dark. The same gift that makes you feel music in a way other people simply cannot. The same gift that makes you notice what goes unnoticed, feel what goes unfelt, hold what everyone else drops. But a gift given to the wrong person is not generosity. It is loss. And you have been the most generous person in every room you have ever walked into, to people who were never going to honor what that cost you. Not because you were foolish, but because you had not yet learned the most important thing about being someone who feels this deeply. Your sensitivity was never the problem. Who you gave it to was. And that is something you can change. Starting now. Starting with the decision not to explain yourself one more time to someone who has already decided how this story ends. Starting with the quiet, revolutionary act of taking your truth back inside yourself and keeping it there, safe, yours. Finally, completely protected. You do not owe anyone access to your healing, not an explanation, not a summary, not even a goodbye. Some doors close best in silence, and the ones worth walking through, the real ones, the ones that lead to the life you were always supposed to be living. Those doors do not require you to justify yourself to open them. They only require one thing, that you finally, at long last, believe you deserve to walk through them.